Adrianne Lynch with the Lynch team at Conway Real Estate, and I have Elaine Poker-Yount with me today with Visiting Angels. Welcome.
Hello, welcome. Thanks for having me.
So today I thought it would be great for us to talk about the long-term care insurance policy and the pay for care. So my first question for you is, what is the most important thing to know about using long-term care insurance policies?
Okay, so this goes for the person who's using it, and it also goes for their family, which is really important. Number one is just remembering that you have it. I know that sounds kind of silly, but a lot of people, oh, I don't know, I sort of remember a little bit paperwork, that we did somewhere along the line. Talk about it, have that conversation, and if you even think there's a chance, go digging around to think, to find where it is. Because a lot of people kind of find it after the fact and they aren't able to utilize all the money that they have put into it. So that's really important. And then reading it and finding out how it works. And sometimes it's a little bit confusing. So if there's an 800 number, call it. They will walk you through. Make sure your family member is there with you, so that there's somebody else listening to what the benefits are and how it works. Does it work in your home? Every policy is written differently. So sometimes you are allowed to have it in your home. Sometimes it's just meant for assisted living. Sometimes it's meant for skilled care. Now memory care is part of the equation, and that isn't something that really existed when most of these policies were written. So do they turn that skilled care into the memory care? Finding out how that works. So share that information then with your family so that they know. And then also finding out what your elimination period is. And an elimination period is very similar to a deductible that, maybe you have to pay $500 or $1,000 before your insurance kicks in. Mm-hmm. Typically, your elimination period will be 90 days. So you have to pay 90 days out of pocket. Sometimes it's 30, sometimes it's 60, sometimes it's none, but kind of understanding that piece so that you know how to work within the parameters that you have, because sometimes you don't have to have care for 90 days. Sometimes the policy will read if you have 20 hours of care in a week, that will eliminate 7 days. So understanding exactly how that policy works is very important.
So what is typically the biggest problem that you run into when you're trying to get the policy paying for care?
Okay, just understanding that you fall within the parameters of care. So there's something called ADLs, Activities of Daily Living. So typically to get a policy to kick into gear, you have to not be able to do 2 of the activities of daily living. So eating, and this one's a little bit rough because it's not being able to prepare your own food, it's being able to feed yourself. Although if it's very clear you can't prepare your own food, when the nurse comes to visit, they'll see that. Because when you're trying to open a policy, a nurse will come out to the house and do an evaluation. But, can somebody feed themselves? Can they bathe themselves? And that means even standby assist. If they're unstable in the shower and they need somebody to help them with that, that's considered not being able to bathe yourself. Can you dress yourself? Can you walk comfortably by yourself? That mobility transfer. Can you get from a chair, to a wheelchair, from a wheelchair to a chair on your own without assistance, or are you a fall risk? Are you incontinence? Maintaining continence is part of it, but if you are incontinent, that's usually one of the easiest ones that kind of checks off that list. And then being able to toilet yourself, appropriately. And then, so you have to have 2 of those that you're unable to do. But then the other thing that really can get in the way for people a lot is people who have memory issues. A lot of policies weren't written to say if you have dementia, but most policies are kicking into gear if people have dementia. But when that nurse is there, people who have dementia oftentimes think there's nothing wrong with them and they're doing great. So they'll say, oh, I can do that. Oh, I do that by myself all the time. And the reality is that's not the case, but having somebody there with you so that they're not a vulnerable adult to be able to say, okay, this is the reality of what we're dealing with, because that's really important.
Oh, I think that's great. What do people need to remember when it comes to their policies?
Well, number one is kind of understanding how much money you have to spend and how it works. Some policies are unlimited. Some policies give you daily limits. So it might be $120 a day. It might be $180 a day. Whatever that is, and how long their benefit period goes. It may be a couple of years. It may be unlimited. It may be the duration of how much the money is, before it runs out. So kind of understanding that is really important so that you know what you're working with and how much is allocated. Sometimes they'll do X amount of dollars in the home, X amount of dollars in community, so it's different. So figuring that out and have somebody help you. But the other thing that really becomes an issue is people are really reticent to start it because they don't want to run out of money. But you typically, you have time to kind of prepare for, additional financing moving down the road, and your options become a little bit different as you get older and as you run out of money. That's certainly a piece. But if you have to pay out of pocket for 90 days, you really want to do that out of pocket where you don't need a lot of care. So if people wait too long to open their policy and all of a sudden they need 8 hours of care or they need full days of care, then they're paying way more money out of pocket than they are if they would have said, okay, we're going to just, we just need 4 hours a day. Let's start this policy. Well, we're doing 4 hours a day so that we're only paying maybe $110, out of our pocket versus 200 or 300. It depletes your personal funds too quickly if you wait too long to open it. So that's a really critical piece.
No, I think that's great. I think it's great because people don't realize, how policies work, how the finances part of it works. So it is great for them to, make sure they understand what the coverage is and how it works.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. There's one more piece that I really forgot to put in there that is super critical. And when you're having this conversation with your family, whether you're asking your parents if they have a policy to be able to look at, to be able to weave into the equation, or whether you as a parent are saying to your kids, hey, we've got this thing, this will help for care. It's also really important to get the power of attorney paperwork to the insurance company so that if something happens to you, especially in memory care cases, or if somebody has a stroke and you don't have that ability to communicate, so that they can work with the people that you have appointed to be able to take care of things. Sometimes policies are considered joint because if I don't use all the money, my husband can down the road. But let's say dad has dementia and dad can't do any of the negotiating. Or even if he is healthy, he's not allowed to negotiate on your behalf because they don't have that paperwork in sync. We've seen a lot of that happen with families, and we're waiting and petitioning them to be able to recognize this person as your power of attorney, as your guardian maybe, because you don't have powers of attorney appropriately in place. Right. So that part is really important, getting that information. Say, these are my people, here are the copies of the legal docs. I want you to be able to work with them.
No, I think that's great. And I think that is, people forget that, that power of attorney piece is very important because you don't know, especially in memory care, when it can shift for them. I think that's perfect. Well, what's the best way for them to reach you? I know we'll put it in the comments, but I always like to have you say the best way to reach you.
Best way to reach us is just give our office a call at 480-833-8247.
Perfect. Well, thanks for being on again.
Thanks, Adrienne.